Our next speaker is John Oberg. John is a social media influencer and professional dedicated to making the world a kinder place for animals by utilizing the power of social media. He served as a director of new media for the International Animal Protection Organization, the Humane League, and as a director of communications for vegan outreach. In 2019, John launched his own independent patron-founded project to maximize his impact for animals. Today, John will be talking about the power of social media for animals. So please welcome John Oberg.
Hey, Bianca, thank you so much for that introduction. I really appreciate it. I'm very excited to be here. And I've got a lot to fit in 20 minutes, so I will be pretty brief here. So thank you again. I spoke 2 years ago at the International Animal Rights Conference in Luxembourg, and I loved it. It was one of the highlights of my career, speaking there, and I really loved it. So I'm looking for, I'm very excited to be here too, albeit digitally, virtually. I am here in Richmond, or in Alexandria, Virginia, right now on the East Coast of the US. So not quite as exciting as being there in Luxembourg with everybody face to face, but this is still great. So thank you for having me here to speak about the power of social media. So I want to talk really quickly about this pig. So a couple of years ago, I went to a vigil outside of a slaughterhouse in Los Angeles where I was living at the time. And I took a video of this pig on a slaughter truck as he arrived at the slaughterhouse. And I locked eyes with this pig for a good minute. And I filmed this pig as they were looking at me, distraught and sad. And I want you to imagine yourself for a minute in their shoes. You have never seen the light of day until one day, after spending months in darkness on a cold, barren concrete floor in real confusion and sadness and terror. And you eventually find yourself on a truck bound for Los Angeles. You're spending hours, days on this truck, and you get to this unremarkable building in downtown Los Angeles. And then you see these activists who I was a part of, giving you water and maybe filming you. And so I filmed this sad, confused pig for a good 60 seconds as they look back at me, just moments before they enter the facility and unfortunately were killed and eventually eaten. But this video that I took made it so that this animal's life was not in vain. I took this video, I uploaded it to Twitter, and it's been seen hundreds of thousands of times. As you can see from this tweet here, it's been retweeted over 2,000 times. And so that is the power of social media. That is the power that all of us have at our fingertips, is that we can take the horrors that farm animals are facing around the world, and we can make the horrors that they face not have been done in vain. We can inspire future generations and future individuals to eat and live in a more compassionate way that does not require these animals to live in terror and to face cruelty. So I focus on social media. So you probably say, okay, yeah, I think that there's some value in social media, but I have no clue where to start. And so this is for a lot of those individuals out there, other animal activists like you, who want to make a difference for these animals, and you want to utilize the power of social media. So there's a few questions you might want to ask yourself. Like, one, which platforms do I focus on? There's so many platforms out there. Really, what you want to do is you want to find the platforms where you find the most value and also feel the most comfortable, and where you can utilize your niche the best. So for me, my 3 big platforms are Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. That's where I focus the majority of my efforts. And we have an opportunity cost here, right? You can't just focus on all platforms. If you do, you're not going to do anyone that great. And then at the same time, you don't want to just focus on one platform, because then you're losing opportunities to make an impact on these other platforms. So for me, it's these big 3. For you, it might be other ones. But really look at the landscape of platforms out there and try and figure out where you can best be a voice for animals. Now, the 2 most important metrics to pay attention to on social media are these 2 focuses: growth and reach. Growth is essentially how many more followers are you gaining. And why is that important? Because that means you have more people to see your content, but also more people to share your content. And that brings me into reach. Reach is essentially how many people are seeing your posts. And so it's a numbers game, right? As animal advocates, we already know that most people don't want to support animal cruelty. They are appalled when they see the cruel reality that farm animals face. And so it's our duty as effective animal advocates to get as many people as possible to see this content. And so reach, increasing your reach. And these two metrics play hand in hand. As you grow, your reach increases. And as your reach increases, you get more followers. So these two things really you need to be paying attention to. So effective strategy in the age of social media. There are, and feel free to take a screenshot of this, take a picture with your phone, whatever you see fit. It's really important to remember that as animal advocates, as some of the few people who are willing to get out there day in and day out to advocate for animals, we need to use the opportunity in front of us wisely. We need to maximize the good that we can do for animals. So it's not just important to speak up for animals, but it's really important to speak up for them in the ways that we find to be maximizing the potential to help animals, because there's a lot of potential out there, because unfortunately there's a lot of abuse going on around the world behind the closed doors of factory farms and slaughterhouses. So first, you want to figure out what you want to get out of social media. What is your niche? So for example, if you have a real passion for plant-based food and food photography, then maybe your niche isn't going out there and protesting. But if your passion comes from getting on the streets and handing out leaflets or holding up signs, but you don't care about vegan food at all. Obviously you eat vegan food, but you don't care about, fancy food at all. You're happy with eating just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich every day. Then maybe that is, protesting is more of a niche that you fill. Figure out what your niche is, where you find that you can bring the most value to the movement, and run with that. And then, of course, set goals for yourself for engagement and growth. So don't just participate in social media. Also, day in and day out, pay attention to what's working. See how much engagement you're getting, how fast you're growing. And obviously, you want to be in a positive trajectory with both of these. You want to be getting more engagement in your posts, so more likes, more comments, more shares, but also growing faster. So getting more and more followers, not losing followers. Of course, manage your expectations as well. So growth and progress will be very slow, especially in the beginning. If you launch a Facebook page or Instagram or Twitter, there are going to be some posts where you have 1, 2, 3 likes, 1, 2, 3 shares. And that can be painful initially, but understand that as you are consistently and patiently going about this strategy using social media, the growth and the reach will come in time. Just manage your expectations. Understand that that progress is slower in the beginning, but it will come in time. Also understand that it's you versus the algorithm, okay? Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so many of the social media platforms have algorithms that figure out what their users want to see. And therefore, you can be a victim of the algorithm, or you can exploit the algorithm to the animal's benefit. It's up to you. Now, you really need to focus on getting as much content in front of as many eyes as possible, right? So it's an algorithm that you're battling. There isn't one person sitting behind a curtain that's making everything happen. It's a complicated computer algorithm. And so what you need to do is figure out what seems to be working on social media and what isn't working on social media, and do more of what's working and less of what's not working, both for you and for your competitors and for everybody in general. So really focus on that, because if you are placing poorly in the algorithm, that is potentially problematic for your chances of getting more content to be seen by as many people as possible. So it's important to frame your content and your captions and everything to be as engaging as possible, and use emotion. Emotion people respond to. If people have chosen to follow you, they don't want to just follow you for you documenting your life. It's to be connected with you emotionally. People want to know how you feel about things. So I recommend doing these two following things after this presentation at some point this weekend or this coming week. One, spend an hour looking at how successful activists are using social media. So take, 3, 4, 5 activists that you look up to on social media and see what they're doing. See what they're doing well, is what seems to be working for their audience, but also pay attention to what's not working as well and gain inspiration from there. It's very important that we need to remember as animal advocates that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We already know much of what can work and much of what can't work. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel. The second homework assignment for everybody here is to spend 30 minutes looking at your own past social media presence and see what has really been working and what hasn't been working. So go to your Facebook page, go to your Twitter, and go back several dozen posts and see, okay, this kind of content seems to be getting a lot of engagement. This kind of content didn't get as much. Learn from that. It's very important to really be constantly learning as an animal advocate. Also, always put yourself in your audience's shoes, okay? It's very important that, yes, most of us watching this are vegan and vegan activists, in fact, but it's important that we appeal to non-vegans. Why? Because it's non-vegans who are the ones that are actively making choices every single day that are causing real abuse to animals. And so what's the point of being really liked by a bunch of vegans? That's not that helpful in terms of creating a vegan world, right? So we need to really focus on non-vegans. So you need to put yourself in your audience, particularly the non-vegan audience, put yourself in their shoes and see how they would accept your message. Also, post consistently. So schedule posts with third-party platforms like Buffer. I schedule posts for 1 or 2 weeks at a time usually, and this is so nice. It really allows me to focus all of my creative energy at once, and also prevents me from waking up every day and thinking, oh my God, what am I going to post today? What can I post today? Which can be very stressful and time consuming as well. So scheduling your posts in advance is great. I use a platform called Buffer. There are other ones out there as well. Don't forget the small stuff matters as well. So fill out your bio, have a good profile photo, choose it carefully, use the link that you have in there, have consistency. These little things really do make a difference in the big scheme of things. Also, post the right amount of content. So not too much that you're overwhelming your audience and burning them out, but not too little that people forget you exist. Find that sweet spot right in between. Also, organize your content. So something I do is I have a Google Team Drive with thousands of videos, tens of thousands of photos of animals, and so I have a huge plethora, a huge storage of content that can be used for social media advocacy. And this is something that everybody can do. So if you've gone to some animal sanctuaries and you've been to some vigils and you've done some protests, take the photos and videos and everything from this content, organize it into a place where you can also share with others should you have to, but also so you can access it from anywhere in the world at any time. It's very, very useful. And again, this kind of goes with the idea of posting consistently and scheduling posts. These kinds of little things are going to make your social media game much more effective. And also remember that effective social media advocacy requires constant dialogue and monitoring, not just one and done posting. So it's important that you're engaging with your audience. So yes, I will schedule 1 or 2 weeks of tweets at a time, but then throughout every day, pretty much, I am jumping on Twitter and engaging with my audience. I'm replying to the replies to my tweets. I'm liking these tweets. I'm going through my news feed and engaging with other people. So it's very important that we're not just looking at our social media activism as one and done posting. It's more complex than that. Effective communication in the age of social media, it's important to work to empower and inspire your audience, not just oppress them. Yes, the cruel reality that farm animals face in 2020 is awful. It's wretched, and it deserves to have a spotlight on it, talking about the cruel reality that these animals are facing, and framed in a way that is talking about how shocking it is and how depressing it is. But at the same time, don't just depress your audience and leave them hanging. Also, what you want to do is work to empower and inspire your audience. Talk about the great plant-based food that you're eating. Talk about, incorporate humor. Show that vegans aren't just all doom and gloom all the time. So don't go all in on one single emotion. So doom and gloom is okay, but do so in moderation. And then it's important to also blend sad content with happy content. Also throw in fun content, funny content, personal content. Talk about yourself. Talk about your own journey in advocacy, but also talk about things that aren't even related to animal advocacy. Show that you are a three-dimensional person. And most importantly, when it comes to being effectively, or when it comes to, so most importantly, when you want to effectively communicate the animal's message on social media, it's important to not be a jerk. This whole presentation can really come down to just those few words. Why is it important not to be a jerk? Because when is the last time that you saw somebody being a jerk and said, I want to be like that person? Probably never. And so it's important that as effective animal advocates, we are getting out there and we are advocating for animals in a way that gets others to want to be like us, to want to adopt a vegan diet and so on. So a big, easy way to prevent yourself from being a jerk is to take a deep breath and cool down for a few minutes before replying, especially to trolls. Other tips for your consideration, I'm running short on time, so I will just let you take a screenshot of this or take a picture with your phone. But it's important to remember a few of these little things. And again, it's the small stuff that matters. A lot of these little things here and there, like use emojis, use a lot of video content, make posts emotional. These little things are really going to take your social media game up a level. And then when it comes to dealing with trolls and endless debates, get out of there. So yes, I do recommend engaging a little bit from time to time, but don't waste all of your time on energy on people who don't really have an interest in actually conversing with you or having a logical debate. And after all, what's the point of dedicating, many, many minutes or hours of your day to one single person who probably isn't going to change anyway? It's much more important to get out there and reach as many people as possible rather than just focusing on one or two people over a longer period of time. So I will leave you with this great quote that I think all of us social media animal advocates really, really need to remember. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. That's from the great late Maya Angelou. So it's important that as animal advocates, what we need to remember is how we are making people feel. Are we inspiring people to make a difference for animals? Because that is, at the end of the day, all that matters. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, John, so much for this presentation. We already have a question, and I would like to encourage everyone else, if you have additional questions, feel free to post it in the Q&A section of your Zoom client. So I will read out the first question for you now, John. So non-vegans are actively ignoring the truth about animal abuse and their part in it and don't like being confronted with it or challenged. How do you strike the right tone with your posts?
That is a fantastic question. I don't believe that, or I do believe that people don't really like to be confronted with the truth. At the same time, I think that they also are opposed to this kind of cruelty that farm animals are facing in today's world. And so for that reason, what I try to do is strike this right balance between friendliness and assertiveness. And I think that this is kind of a balance that many of us can try and strike. Maybe it's not those two particular things that you want to balance together, but that's what I find to be most effective. So you want to make people aware of the cruel reality that farm animals are facing, but also you don't want to make them feel so judged and so shamed that they just turn away. At the same time as well, you want to focus on content that makes people feel something. Like I mentioned with Maya Angelou's quote, make people feel something, but at the same time, not make it so awful that people just turn away and turn a blind eye. So for example, if you're going to post footage from factory farms, don't show the goriest thing that you can possibly show. Maybe show something that pulls on the heartstrings. So maybe show a sad pig's eyes as they are confined to a gestation crate for months on end. So that might tear at somebody's heartstrings. But if you were to show, a pig having some awful violence thrust upon them, somebody can much more easily just, scroll right past it or look away and then immediately just kind of push it out of their mind. So really try to strike that right balance.
Okay. And the next question we have is, how do you measure the impact of reaching a bigger audience via social media? How do you measure your success as a social media activist?
So everything comes down to those two big factors, growth and reach, the metrics that I talked about earlier. And growth isn't as important. Growth is just really important because it drives reach. So essentially, the way that I measure my impact for animals is through reach. Yes, anecdotal evidence is nice. So I often will get messages or tweets from people saying like, I'm vegetarian or I'm vegan because of John Oberg, or, this post of yours really made me go vegan. Yes, that anecdotal evidence is great, but I really look at the numbers and in terms of the reach that I'm having. So I'm constantly trying to reach as many people as possible. And the more people that we're reaching on social media, the further away it is from us, which means the higher and higher portion of non-vegans seeing that content. So if you post content and 100 people see it and you're a vegan activist, there's a good portion of those 100 people that are actually probably already vegan, right? There's a 70, 80, 90 of those people might already be vegan. But as that post starts to get shared and seen by people who don't already follow you, it's the percentage it goes the opposite way. And then if you have 10,000 people seeing your post, the odds are 70, 80, 90% of those people are non-vegans. And those are the ones that we need to reach. So for me, I really focus on one thing, and that's reach. Getting as many people as possible to see the hard-hitting content that I'm putting out there in the world.
Okay, perfect. So these are some good ideas already and suggestions. I will move on to the next question. Do you think there is the danger of feeling active by merely sharing and liking posts or videos promoting animal rights?
So I think that social media is a really great thing to add on to the activism that you're already doing. So I don't think that somebody should just drop whatever they're doing on the streets and just go sit behind their phone and their computer all day, every day. I think it's a huge way to amplify the work that you're already doing, but also doing this other thing that is making a big difference. So I think that social media activism is, although most of us are on social media, I believe that most people are actually still not taking social media as seriously as we should, because the impact and the potential is so incredibly large. And so I really encourage people to focus on social media as at least one of the major tools in their toolbox. And I think that what they need to do is when they look at their toolbox and they see the different ways that they can use their efforts to help animals and as the different tools, look at the social media tool and realize that is a much more effective, impactful, sharp tool than they may have been giving it credit for.
Okay, thank you. There's another question here. Um, okay, it starts with a quick comment. I see several people posting vegan art on the internet, but having little support, few followers, few likes. People seem more interested on vegan food. What is your opinion or suggestion on the subject?
I think that there's varying levels of interest with varying kinds of activism. So there's vegan art, there's vegan food, but then there's lots of other kinds of content out there. There's vegan books, there's vegan photos, there's vegan videos. There's so many different kinds of content. What you really need to do is find the niche that speaks to you and also find where that niche overlaps with the most impact that you can make for animals. And I think there is an audience for vegan art. And luckily, with social media, one of the beautiful things about social media is the ability to really narrow in on very niche audiences and niche interests. So we can have, so there's a huge community out there surrounding vegan art. So go to Instagram and search hashtag vegan art, hashtag vegan artists. You can find so much great content. Find the most prolific vegan artists within the movement and see who they're collaborating with, see who they're following on social media, see who is tagging them in posts. So whatever the niche is, you can find the niche. Personally, what I find to be the most effective and most impactful is talking about the cruel reality that farm animals face in 2020. And that's where I focus the vast majority of my efforts because that's where I can make the biggest impact. But if I wasn't, an expert in farm animal welfare and I was more of a vegan foodie, a guy who wakes up on Sunday morning and bakes vegan muffins or something like that and had a really nice camera, took really nice shots of it, then I would be probably posting different content. So you really want to figure out what the content and the niche that most impacts you and most you feel most tied to and really run with that niche.
Okay, great. These are some very interesting and great techniques and ideas to hopefully help people for the social media activism. We have another question. Do you create all your content, your pictures or videos yourself?
Not all of the content. Some of the content I do, and some of the content is not from me. I really focus on what content I think is going to be most impactful. And some of the times that's from animal sanctuaries. Some of the times that's from undercover footage from undercover investigators. And so it really, really depends on what I think is going to work best. So that's something I do on a regular basis. I'm constantly looking at the social media landscape and I'm trying to gauge what is working well and what isn't working so well on social media. And that is where I'm constantly figuring out, okay, where should I focus my energy? Where should I focus the direction of my content?
So do you think that posting shocking pictures showing brutality is important? You already talked about this earlier a little bit. Do you want to elaborate
Sure.
some more about this?
Sure, I absolutely do think that posting images and videos of shocking brutality is important. I think there is a fine line that activists need to draw and understand when they've gone too far. Because, yes, the most egregious cruelty we can possibly imagine is going on right now behind closed doors of factory farms. And I guarantee you, if you tried hard enough, you'd be able to find this content and you could physically post it. But you need to ask yourself, where is it going beyond a point of actually being effective? You get to a point of diminishing returns when you start going too cruel. So what I would recommend doing is finding that right balance. And so for me, I really try to focus on making people I focus more on making people sad and angry than I do focusing on just absolutely blinded with rage, because I don't think that's going to be as effective. And I'll occasionally throw content in there that's a little bit more aggressive, but I also balance it out with happier content. So something I actually do, and I think that all animal advocates should do, is constantly look at the content that they're posting and look at it as a way that it can be balanced out. So I will throw a lot of sad content out there, but I'll also throw a lot of happy content out there. And that's for a few reasons. One of the reasons of which I don't want to burn out my audience. I don't want my audience to see the same kind of content all the time. Even if that's the particular content that they're really interested in, they are going to get bored and start to tune you out. So it's really important to kind of keep your audience guessing as to what's coming next.